Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to She Money LinkedIn Live. It's 11 o'clock Mountain Time in Park City, Utah, which is where we are based. We're just going to give folks a minute or two to join the call. Please feel free to actively use the chat throughout the call today. You can post who you are, where you're calling in from if you like. You want to post a message, a holiday greeting, feel free to do that too. We're excited to be heading into the holiday season here in Park City. We're going to do a little dance for snow, which we do not have yet. But I can't believe is it December 9th? I don't even know. It's December 9th. How did that happen? So welcome. We're again just going to give folks a minute or two to join. This is also being recorded today. So we have a live session. If you're watching it on replay, thank you so much. We are excited for you to participate in this conversation. And it's so cool that we can do this on LinkedIn and have it live there. It's also living on our YouTube channel, which we started recently. So lots of ways to watch and engage, and just appreciate your interest in this amazing topic today. Well, folks are joining. I think I'll just kick it off again. Welcome to the call if you're joining in live or on the recorded session. My name is Jackie Zahner. I am the founder of She Money, which is a company that whose mission is to advance your financial engagement and wellness. We're based in Park City, Utah. Have a newsletter here on LinkedIn. We're up to, I think today, about 164,000 direct subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed already, please feel free to do that. And I'm excited about our last LinkedIn Live for 2024. We've done a lot of them and always appreciate our guests joining us to talk about really important topics. And this one is something that's very near and dear to my heart, which is money plus technology plus AI. And this is something where I think all of us are just in this active engagement and learning. It feels like the future is just unfolding daily in terms of what this means for all of us. And I know I was on a learning journey myself to educate myself in this space. I listen to podcasts, read books. I think I have my Mastering AI book I'm reading right now. And when you invite things in, people land. And it was this year that I met an extraordinary person and our guest today, who is Shubi Rao, the founder of UpLevel. And before she joined us on stage, let me just tell you a little bit about Shubi. Shubi lives in Austin, Texas. She has 36 years of professional experience in technology, spanning careers at Ford, Tesco, PwC, and most recently Alphabet and Google. She has an educational background in engineering, computer science, and business, and is one, sadly, not sad about Shubi, but there are so few female founders in the generative AI platform and technology space. So how awesome it is that we get to have a conversation with one of them today, who's become a personal friend and someone I'm just really happy to have in my orbit, Shubi Rao. So welcome to the conversation, Shubi.
Thank you, Jackie. It honestly is a pleasure to be here today, and I'm really excited to talk about this with you. There's so much we can discuss, but thank you for all of you who have tuned in today. Welcome again. And again, throughout the conversation, we will post information. If in the event that I skip or forget, of course, there is the UpLevel website, or as well as the She Money channels. So you should be able to get, this really rich conversation we're going to have either on the site or offline.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. And if you're just joining, please feel free to introduce yourself if you want in the chat, post questions. We have a whole team around us here that are going to make sure we get that in questions throughout the session today. So thank you again, and posting lots of links and things in the chat. So Shubi, you are a woman who, like me, is not just a youngster in this space. My background is in finance, yours is in technology. I feel like I want our brains to, we've developed our friendship just to merge. You've already taught me so much about tech, but let's start with just a little bit of level setting about your career in technology, because you've been at this a long time, and just introduce sort of a little bit of the level set of where we are now in this world of evolution of technology, and especially with an AI and a generative AI lens. So share a little bit about yourself.
So 1984 is when my dad bought a Apple IIe, which sat in the kitchen, and we all kids, my brothers and I, used it, and it was something I absolutely fell in love with. Fast forward, that's why I went to school to study both computer science engineering and biomed. Typically Indian American family, hedging my bets for both engineering and medicine. But when I graduated in 1990, it was tough to be the only woman engineer. And although I worked for some of the most amazing companies out of the Detroit office, but it was that's a whole separate book. Someday we can write about what it was back then. It hasn't improved as much today, but nevertheless, that's that's how it was back then. Got my MBA, and I think that was today. As you said, to be a more mature founder of what we're trying to do. I'm so glad I'm doing it in this phase of my life, because that academic education, those experiences, the opportunity that I got to work for some very large companies, both in the United States, outside of the United States, and then coming back to really a pure technology company, Alphabet, Google, in the Valley, I think has really, really informed so much of the decisions, and why I decided to embark on this path. And if I can just focus on that time when I was with Google, Alphabet back, and actually living in Palo Alto, California, was I think had a real profound experience. It was a real profound experience because the first few months, it was like being a kid in a candy store. It was amazing. And then slowly the sheen started to sort of wear off, because I started to recognize that, wow, this amazing technology that's being built. And today here we are, we're all talking about generative AI, et cetera, right? But when you're in that ecosystem, you really have the ability to see what's going to happen in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, right? Like you really do have a front row seat to a certain extent. And what I saw, whether it was in the various events or, just, product launches, so much of it I felt like was being built by men. And nothing wrong, by the way, for products to be built by men. But to me, what was really important is where's the representation, where are the perspectives of women, especially when it came to AI. And why did I really latch onto the AI piece back then was because of data. And why data? Well, because that's something that I really understood pretty well, because I had to use a lot of data in my day-to-day life, where, both on the finance side as well as on the technology side. And I had this deep understanding of how critical data is. Where do you source the data? How do you pre-process the data? How do you cleanse the data? How do you then train the algorithms, right? And these were just business applications. They were not B2C, more on the B2B side. But that's when I started to, the wheels started turning, going, if this is the trajectory and these are the projections, well, then where are those voices for the women, and who's thinking about us?
Yeah, well, and thank you. And we are going to jump into in a minute, like why you started what you started, but just to land in that space, like you, to your point, and you often say this, you had a front row seat to the future, and you're at a company like Google, Alphabet, and and I think the timing was you were there 7 years ago to 4. I think you've been with UpLevel now for 4 years. So we'll talk about that and staying current with everything. But you saw that where we were going, and with generative AI in particular. And it's been 2 years since ChatGPT launched. And I feel like that was a moment where all of a sudden the public, who were not insider in the tech world, kind of started to get this glimpse, certainly of the world of LLMs, which is only a tiny piece, of course, of what the space of AI and generative AI really looks like. But do a little of that, of sort of where we were even just 4 years ago to where we are now, because, big tech, obviously, companies like, obviously NVIDIA is one that produces and supports big tech and AI with their chips, but it just feels like so much has changed in such a short period of time. And it feels like, to me, it brings on actually a little bit of anxiety, because I feel like I should know so much more than I do. And there's just this constant journey of feeling like you're being left out or left behind, which is, I know, a motivator to So talk a little bit about the state of tech. That's such a big question, but AI, where we were 4 years ago even, and where we are today.
Yeah, and let's just go back, right? Because you can just see this almost like this exponential growth that we're beginning to see. So if you think about the first 20, 25 years when the internet was launched, it was very focused primarily on the B2B applications, more productivity. There was some that was, yeah, in classrooms and, but they really, we didn't have a little computer in our hand, right? So that was really the first wave. Then came Internet 2.0, and that really was more B2C. We started to have more social media, Facebook, Google, right, Instagram, WhatsApp, etc. But then that became more B2C, and that's been around now for almost 20 plus years. Now look at where AI is, and all of us. And by the way, when we think about the whole B2C, even that whole movement, you could almost separate it to a certain extent from your day-to-day life. It didn't impact everybody in the way I think AI is going to impact everybody, because AI is something that is going to get integrated and is getting integrated, everything from your kitchen appliances to how education is going to get reframed and how we're going to start to teach kids to in healthcare. The applications are immense. Why is that? Because in a way we're really thinking about it as an augmentation to our brain. So every task we do, every activity we do, clearly has an application that is AI focused, and hence it's not because NVIDIA, of course, has enabled. There's a lot of technology that is enabled, but the sheer number of applications that we're seeing is why 92% of the companies are saying they want to invest in technology. And I think this confluence of investment dollars coming into AI, plus all organizations wanting to invest in AI, and the sheer number of applications of AI is just what's driving the speed and the velocity of AI.
Well, and true. I mean, I subscribe to a bunch of newsletters. Excuse me, I'm fighting a bit of a cold if I take a sip of tea. But I can't keep up. And I think that's part of the challenge, is knowing, like, there's so many angles to this, right? The personal productivity angle, the career, right? Which we're going to talk, I think, more about. Like, how do you ensure that you're staying and evolving with what's happening in AI and having those skills? You call it digital acumen, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But just the speed and the velocity does feel super overwhelming, and the amount of power and wealth that's being concentrated because of it. And those that are invested and have like the billions of dollars to not even millions anymore, but literally billions to allocate and to be at the cutting edge. It feels like that divide is just getting bigger and bigger behind, who's creating the companies, who have the skills to survive and thrive in them. And there is a big gender divide, which you alluded to earlier, when women are being, maybe perspectives from a design perspective aren't included, but also if by not embracing, and I know there's a lot of research around this, technology as a tool in the same way that men do. And again, not to talk about all the differences, but it's just so important. That's why we're doing this, to feel like you can be part of this story, and both on a personal level and on a professional level. So chat a little bit about that piece of it. The digital acumen, like, what does it mean to lean into where we're going and the opportunity that can be coming from that versus, opting out, or at least staying on the shore, not getting on the boat, as I like to say.
So if we just focus on, and this is true, right? When you look at the workforce, women tend to be more knowledge workers than, let's say, men, where men can be in service and construction and all of that. But so when you look at the overall makeup, women tend to be more on as knowledge workers. And as knowledge workers, we had to obviously have our domain expertise in whatever we did, but more importantly, the kind of skill sets that helped us to propel into leadership were financial acumen, strategic acumen, business acumen. And even when you come out of college, if those are that's the journey we get ourselves onto if we as we're trying to grow. So of course you have to have the domain expertise in what you're doing, but you really need that acumen. And that acumen, some of it, if you're talking about financial acumen, yes, it's more black and white. You really understand how to read financial statements. You understand P&L. You understand that, right? Strategic or business acumen can be a little bit more fuzzier. But in totality, that I think was sets of acumen we needed to become leaders. Now, all of a sudden, we have to understand what digital acumen is. And what I mean by that is really understanding how what technology is applicable to my job, as an example. So take a step back and think through what tasks and activities do I do, and what lends itself really well to using technology to do it faster, smartly, improve my productivity, and what can I then free up as a knowledge worker to think through where I really do need that critical thinking skill set, or I need the more collaborative skill set, the more higher order of thinking that technology cannot do. But that's what I mean by that digital acumen, is really having clarity on what should I as a human be focusing on and delivering, and what could I really think about outsourcing to technology. And I think the people that really understand that, they say, there's so much chatter about, well, AI is going to take your jobs. I'm not sure AI is going to take my job. I think somebody else who really understands and has that strong digital acumen is going to really take my job.
Well, and we've had a lot of meetings together talking to various folks, and I think companies, right, are really struggling to figure this out too, because they're evolving, their employees are evolving with them. They, the leaders, doesn't matter. A lot of this is new to everyone. This integration of what is at the corporate level, and where does the strategy going, and how do you create that alignment with the workforce, is something that we talk about a lot. And you have shed some light on some of this employment data, that a lot of jobs, and we see a lot of companies cutting jobs, but to your point, they're replacing them with other types of jobs, right? So talk a little bit about that employment picture and what you're seeing in terms of, especially the bigger corporates, just to pause there for a minute, how this is really playing out in terms of the evolution of the workforce to meet these opportunities and challenges that are being brought by, these new tools.
So let's look at the most recent employment data. And this is one thing I would love to urge all of folks that are listening in. Don't ever look at just headline data numbers. Always go away and parse the data. So let's look at the most recent example, which is unemployment data that just came out last week. On the surface, it sounds like everything is really hunky-dory. Numbers are great. Unemployment is fairly low. We added actually more jobs. But then when you start to really peel the layers of the onion back, what you see is, yes, we did add jobs. Where did we add them? Oh, in healthcare, in leisure and hospitality, in government, right? Now, those are actually also very women-dominated sectors, but they're also the sectors that are not the highest paying sectors. Then let's look at all the other sectors, right? Whether it's technology, oil and gas, automotive, aerospace, etc. What are we hearing? By the way, never, I don't think in our history that I recall, balance sheets of corporates have been as strong as they. I mean, you can just look at where markets are trending. Right? So very, very strong balance. Yes, right. So it's very strong balance sheets that corporates have. But at the same time, we're hearing about layoffs, right? So where are the layoffs coming from? And if you listen to the earnings calls, or you listen to the presentations of the senior leadership, they are not saying we are on a cost-cutting mission, or we're taking actions, restructuring. No, what they're saying very clearly is that we are choosing to reinvest into more, I think, AI, right? And so that everybody, 92% of the companies are saying they want to reinvest. And so what are they doing? They're actually creating capacity to be able to do so. And so, sad but true that as these folks are getting laid off, I mean, they're making a conscious decision as to who's on the journey with them, as they, now transform their workforce. And that's the other thing we were talking about earlier, right? Like AI has become so pervasive that it's not just transforming the applications, and it's not just contained to the B2B corporate productivity, but it's really everywhere in our lives. And in 15, 20 years, when we look back, we're going to think, wow, that was a huge transformation of workforce that happened. Everything from the time we graduate from college to being on boards is going to require very different skill set, because corporates themselves, and they recognize that they are transforming and will have to transform. And as like you said, time is not on our side. So they want that talent. They need that talent to enable the execution. And I think that's something that I think we're going to see even more of, that composition and the makeup of the workforce changing dramatically.
Well, and I think it's from entry-level jobs, right, at big companies. I was just at Goldman Sachs last week for a big event, and part of it was a partner alumni event, and part of it was a conversation with David Solomon, the current CEO, as well as people on the investment side and government relations, and what's happening with the change of administration. But you're seeing it from how is a company like Goldman Sachs, right, going to transform itself, and what does that mean for what jobs, like you said, are going to be automated. You're still going to need people, but how those jobs look and feel, and the skill sets that people come in with, or that they're willing to invest in, and how to train those folks, I think David was saying this, is just going to evolve dramatically. It's not that you don't need people, but you need people that know how to use tools in a way that wasn't true maybe a few years ago. And even entrepreneurial, I think in some ways small companies have the ability to do things so much more affordably, on the one hand, but if you don't know how to do that, then you are going to be left behind. So there's so many layers of this. Well, let's jump into why. We'll talk about up level. So why you left 4 years ago? You were seeing the trend. You knew that there was sort of missing voices, I think, and how this technology was going to evolve and develop, and you decided to leave Google and start your company called Uplevel. So describe what that original vision and what it is today, because you're really just on the verge of becoming, a company that's public facing.
Yes. So I actually left Google Alphabet, and I got the opportunity to be a CFO for a Series B startup. And this is perhaps the benefit of being a more mature founder, is I had to look at myself in the mirror and ask myself, what gives you the right to be a founder of a technology company? And I actually worked with Angie on this to really think through what skill sets do I have and what's missing for me. And although, being both at Ford as well as with Alphabet, Google, working with the other bets, which are really small startups within our organization, it's still not the same as actually working inside of a startup. And I needed that startup experience, because what right do I have to take investor money and not have that experience of what it is, because one thing, and I can tell you that was a great experience, because it's one thing to work in big organization, and also to be a senior leader, that you forget what it is like to roll up your sleeves. And boy, when you're an entrepreneur, you really have to roll up your sleeves and work those crazy hours. And so, I just wanted to say, so that was a great experience that led me to really think about and that this was the right time to start Uplevel. But it goes back to what I said earlier, which is all throughout my life, being a woman and being a woman of color, it's always been that, it's this constant, it feels like it's a never ending quest, if you will, that you're continually chipping away to be able to belong, right? Like, it isn't a natural sense of belonging. You have to you have to work really, really hard and prove yourself 10 times over so that you can get a seat at the table. And why is that? Because, right or wrong, it's history, which is so much of what the world is today, outside of the home, has been created by men. So in my job, I had to extensively work with Wall Street. Well, let's look at all whether it's JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, UBS, Goldman Sachs. You look at all the investment bankers I had to work with, majority of them are men, right? And I had to have that sense of belonging there. And so as I started to think about this all through my, and this is a feeling that's been with me all throughout, get to Google Alphabet, that's I thought, oh my God, now the world is really going to transform. And it's talk about hardening. And and so I was complaining about this actually to a friend of mine who was visiting from the UK, and she turned around to me and she said, well, you can complain about it. No, her exact words. So you can whine about it or you can do something about it.
I mean, usually you can whine about it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, she's very British.
I do a lot of whining.
Yeah, I could have done that too. Yeah. Right? But that's really what that was, I think, something that was a huge catalyst in thinking. Yeah, and data is really, really important.
So
gender data does not exist.
And just you mentioned Angie MacArthur is a friend of all of ours here. She is a coach and so much more than that, a consultant at Core Thinking Partners. And I love Angie. In fact, Angie and my friend Robin, the reason I know you. So just to mention that, we can also post that in a chat. But you saw where the world was going, and of all the things, and I love the name, by the way, you decided I could just be a part of this corporate beast where I didn't have the sense of belonging. And it relates so much to my story too, Shubi, in the world of finance, that you can survive, you can even thrive, but you don't feel. And I felt that on a week ago when I went back to Goldman. I just never felt like I kind of belonged, because you're not seeing people reflected, in the products and the services in critical mass. And it's just, it is the way it is. But you decided you're going to make the bold step. You did the startup and you created UpLevel. So say what UpLevel is and where it's going, at this point. And then we're going to sort of bring in sort of how this connects to this bigger conversation especially about women's participation in this time now, which really is, and I believe, and I think you believe this too, a revolutionary time in terms of AI and what this means for our collective future. So what is UpLevel?
So UpLevel is a technology company at its very core, but there are three big important elements on which UpLevel is built on. One is there's 4.5 billion women on planet Earth, and my dream would be to extract the knowledge and the wisdom from all of these women for the goodness of this planet and bring it all together and build good, high quality, curated gender data sets, because such a thing doesn't exist. We have created the first gender data set that is more focused on a professional and personal and financial lives. But imagine if we could, have gender data sets that there's a whole content data stack that reflects our health, women's healthcare, women's policies, women's safety, all and global, right? How powerful would that be? But we don't have it because a majority of the data sets today that power so many of the algorithms of these big, large tech companies, the dominant voices are men, right? So our voices are either absent or they're highly muted. So that's one element of it. The second, of course, is really building the technology. I'm not going to say that the technology is technology. I mean, but what's most important is how you build it. It's not the what of the technology, how you build it. So how are we designing those algorithms in a very thoughtful way, such that they are truly inclusive, they are female forward, and they recognize the challenges of the women. So it's really and most importantly, and that's the third component of it, is the community aspect of it. So as I was thinking about building a platform, I was thinking about, first and foremost, where do women convene? Well, they'll convene in the workspace. So in the workplace, so how can we provide a technology platform to the organizations whereby they can bring all their women together, provide them resources, content, events fully integrated, but at a very democratized price point, because we know 75% of what corporates spend on in terms of leadership development, believe it or not, actually goes to senior leadership, which is 70% men. So there's not a lot of money left for the belly of the organization. But we also know that actually middle management, it's that if you hit that sweet spot of 40 to 60% of mix, so you don't want 100% women, you don't want 100% men, but if you can get that good gender balance, gives you that real diversity of cognitive capital, and that has a high correlation to the financial performance of the companies. So if we could really do that, then that would be a great way for corporates to be able to nurture, to attract, to retain, to develop their women. But then also we have thousands and thousands and thousands of women's organizations that are doing so many things in silos. Actually, Heather, one of our another friends who's also frustrated with this, which is trying to figure out how do we connect all these different women that are working in their silos and pull them together. And that's the other way for us, is to work with women's organizations and have these hubs whereby women can connect and collaborate with each other. So that's up level, and it's very hard. It's really using data for good, building really responsible technology, and allowing for that cross collaboration across continents and geographies.
Yeah, thank you for that, Shubi. And I just for a minute on my soapbox. So when we met back, I think in April, I think you had me at gender data set and an LLM that actually, I mean, you can't remove all bias, and we should talk about that, how biased some of these tools are. And at that time, I was starting to use, I was using ChatGPT, but I would get such wrong answers and such gendered answers. Give me best business books. And again, these are simple applications, or even, being who I kind of ex-Goldman, it was coming on the 25th anniversary of Goldman's IPO. So I went to ChatGPT at the time, and I was just curious what answer it would give. So give me the pre-IPO women partners of Goldman. 100% wrong. I mean, not even in the ballpark, completely stated as fact. So I think we're going to ever more trust that these tools give us correct answers to things. And it's not just, something you can search in Google, get a link, but for insight, for perspective, for recommendations. And what I noticed was just how it just didn't fit me. It just didn't seem right to me. I mean, it's gotten a lot better even in the past 6 months. But when I heard of what you were doing around building a gender data set with curated, licensed data, and what it takes actually to train an algorithm, to train an LLM, and I know you've spent 4 years doing that, and what it could mean. I mean, you have not raised, in the grand scheme of things, that much money to do what you're doing compared to a ChatGPT that's raised hundreds of millions of dollars. But the idea, I remember that one of that first phone call to say we could capture and share the wisdom of women and have a perspective, that is missing from anywhere else, and integrate and license all this incredible data to inform what we mean by personal, financial, digital, acumen and wellness. You kind of had me at hello with that piece. And I know it's completely evolving, but that sort of sent my mind wild. And also the platform, I mean, as someone who, when you mentioned silos, and Heather McCullough, we had our last LinkedIn Live with her. She's a gender policy expert that's passionate around, again, putting a perspective around women in the economy, that there's no place that you can go, right, anywhere that I've been able to found, which is why I've curated so many of the research reports, et cetera, that takes that insight, that wisdom, and delivers it back to you in a conversational way. And I know that's part of what Epilevel is doing, and the platform piece, because, increasingly we have Instagram, of course, Facebook, all these tools, but we know that all our data is being harvested. We know that the algorithm is feeding up things for us to view versus what we choose. And I think that those two things are so broken. The data sets are broken, and that LLM, and the means to communicate and create community with each other, and again, to make the world a better place, both at so many levels. There's nothing built by us and for us. And that's what sort of got me excited about UpLevel and the potential of someone, who has that skill set creating that technology. And that's where I think our hearts and our minds met, because we don't know what it is, because we haven't experienced it. But what I saw is where technology was going, and I knew what I talk about with friends, what I share all the time, and where LLMs in particular were going, but not having one, that I could trust and that I thought was actually trying as best it could to recognize the incredible bias that's in all these tools, unless we're very mindful to try to edit it out. So let's talk a little bit about that LLM space for a minute, because you have created Genie, which again, on a shoestring so far, budget. But what is your dream for what an LLM that is trying to represent diverse voices and perspectives and not just a scrape of the internet could look like? And what should be our expectations around that, even in how we consume tools that are out there and way more mainstreamed, like a ChatGPT or Perplexity or any of these other tools?
Yeah. So, I think LLMs are going to be really interesting in how they're going to really serve women at our very core needs. Because, when you just scrape the internet, well, on the internet, we know that our voices are either absent or they're really muted. Less than 15% of the internet really is women's published voices. And even so, they're predominantly in the Western world, right? So there's whole parts of the world that are just dark for most part. And if we really want to serve women, then we have to create these proper data sets. That has to be the case. And if I could wave a magic wand and we could have millions or billions of dollars, imagine if we could really, every woman could provide her knowledge base, right? So your women physicians, your women lawyers, even women entrepreneurs, right? If we could have this collective knowledge base, and why does that matter? Because context matters. Context matters really much more than just, if you just give me advice, but you give me advice without really understanding who I am and not giving it to me in the right context, it's meaningless. Mm-hmm. And that's right. And the beauty of AI, by the way, is personalization. But how can that algorithm really personalize it for me? If it can take all my surface data, who I am, information in my profile, what I've navigated, etc. But what does it bang against in the data sets it has? It doesn't, right? So it's a mismatch. So it's like, oh, it's got everything about Shubi, so it's created a little persona about me. But does it find something within the data set? Probably not.
Yeah, and
what does it do? So then it creates a composite of what it has in the data set, which is probably more male dominated. And so that's where I think the rubber is going to meet the road.
Well, and as you said, that personalization piece. I mean, we think with She Money, and we're constantly trying to create opportunities for people to engage that is, like you said, is personalized. And that was, I find, so difficult in the money space. My shelves are full of books on everything one would need to know about anything in the money space. But what do you need to know now based on your own unique history, based on your goals, your aspirations, your capacities? That personalization piece when it comes to money, to me, is the holy grail, and because it's not just more content, more books, and it's serving it up generically. And then if you go and personalize, okay, well, you get financial advice, but at the end of the day, what's the business model around that? It's a product trying to get you to buy a service or a fund or whatever.
Right.
So I feel like we don't know what that looks and feels like yet. I think in the medical space, obviously, huge applications in personalized medicine. So that's where I get so excited, whether it's in the money space, is how do you it's not that you replicate it, it's just you supplement in some ways. You harness that wisdom and make it relevant to the person in a situation. And I know for me in the money space and thinking about what we could do with She Money, that's where it gets so excited, because there's so much wisdom, but from who, when, just in time to do what. And I feel like that's the core of what I'm seeing you trying to create, which was what gets me so excited, because we can't leverage one-on-one. I can't sit down with every person, nor can you, right? So if you have enough folks with that wisdom and you're very mindful of how you curate that wisdom, and we're talking about data sets and research and anchored in academic literature. We're not just scraping the internet even there. That's where, when I thought of what up level could be in the future, my mind just went wild. And I know that's what you're trying to create, and that's not easy.
No, but there is actually, we just got a question from Christina Bees. Very, very good question, which is really relevant to the conversation we're having. If I may, and thank you, Christina, for sharing. What you said here is, when I have brought this up with people in AI, they just back against me and say that this has largely been removed from the products. It is wonderful to hear your perspective, because it helps to remember that this is still a huge issue. And you're absolutely right, Christina, because if I were in the room with you, this is what I would say to them, which is, well, okay, let's look at the largest data set to date that has been used to train the GPT models. And at least up until recently, it wasn't their website, but we had the links and we can share that with you. So, which is the GPT model was trained on 500 billion tokens, which is basically scraping the entire internet. Okay. Now, yes, they have, and it is so sad. This is the ugly side, which I will never, ever do in my lifetime. But they have farms of people. There was a big show, by the way, on 60 Minutes 3 weekends ago, that these people have had to curate, right? And what do they have to do? They have to literally sit there and see horrible things to clean, all of these various data sets. Having said that, even if we assume, okay, forget about the fact that we have some real ugliness and a lot of ugliness on the internet, actually, from the user generated content, and just so much of the content on the internet, by the way, is created for content marketing, right? So it's machine generated, very focused on that, because the biggest use case, because of Google, right? So that's a big part of it. Then so that's really a lot of the machine generated, and by the way, so much of that is also focused or created, even that part, by men. And then you look at the user generated content, right? And so you take that out, and that's what I was saying earlier on. When you really distill it down to really clean, curated, published content by women, out of the 500 billion tokens, is about 15 billion tokens, 15.
15 out of 500 billion.
100 billion. And by the way, to look at, and why is that? Well, look at publications by women professors versus male professors. Look at books written by women versus men, right? So look at any sort of working papers, research papers. Our voices are just not there. So we're going to have to really make a concerted effort, right? And that's my dream, is to get every woman to share her wisdom and knowledge with to a data set.
Yeah, and I think and I didn't really get that, Shubhi, until we were chatting. And there are many, these tools are amazing, and they do a lot of things really, really well. They just don't do everything well. And I think about the wisdom, like, I'll give you an example. She's right here, Gloria Steinem, right? Gloria just turned 90 earlier this year. I'm like, imagine a world without that we could capture the wisdom, of Gloria Steinem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, she's written books and articles and all of that. And you can Google and synthesize that for sure. But what if we were way more intentional about that, right? And I think about this, and again, last week I was at Goldman and capturing my story and so many people about experiences that we've had. And it's, how do you, and again, not putting myself on the equivalent of Gloria Steinem for the record, but being really thoughtful about what is the end game here? Like, what are you gathering? What are those data sets, and how to create them with the mindfulness of what purpose they're going to serve in the world. And I just think of the wisdom of our friends, of our grandmothers, and this, and I don't know how to do that. You know how to do that, but it's just really worth thinking about, if increasingly we live in a world where we're being served up wisdom and insight and best of and how-tos knowing how those data sets are created really, really matters, And I didn't really think about it as much until I spoke with you. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, because these are business models being built around this. And we need more diverse tools and data sets in a time when technology and power is just becoming ever so concentrated.
Well, and you talked about the business model, Jackie, and I'm not going to get on my soapbox, but
you can get on your soapbox. I usually have a box of Tide here that I jump on at least once a day.
But and this is the finance in me, right? Like, which really always helps me examine, oh, how are these people making money, and then what motivates them. So let's just spend 2 minutes on that, which is up until now, if you look at the algorithms that are being built by big tech, it doesn't matter which big tech you look at, but the algorithms that are being built, what master are they serving? The master they're serving is advertisers. So we all are like, oh, we're so naive in many ways, going, oh, well, I get to use it for free and I get to, yeah, you sure you do, but you have no idea really what's going on with the data and how your data is being used. There's no such thing as a free lunch in life, right? So they're extracting all of that data, and those algorithms are really designed to serve the advertisers. They're not thinking, like we wake up in the morning at Up Level and we're thinking about the women that we need to serve, and what do we need to do, and to do it in a very ethical way where we don't want to violate her privacy. We don't want to sell her data. How can we keep this data super safe, right? For example, our servers, I refuse to have them in the United States. They're in London. Very expensive for a small little company, but it's a decision I made very early on from day one that we will have it in London because of their higher privacy standards. And as expensive as it is for a small company like us, it's a commitment that we've made, right? And do you think these companies are going to wake up in the morning and think about these women around the world and think about their privacy and how do we protect them? No. So we women have to do it for ourselves, right? And so anyway, so that's one thing you have to always think about it, whether it's ChatGPT or whether it's any one of them, who are they serving?
Right. What's the business model? I mean,
what is the business model?
Most of us have seen Social Dilemma. I think it was, oh my gosh, maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago at Sundance. We'll post that in the chat. If you haven't seen that film, you have to see it. If you don't pay for the product, you are the product. That is just fundamental. And I think it's become so normalized that we just share everything and our data and is getting hacked, but our phones listen to us. Like I talk about, whatever it is, a dog bed, and all of a sudden I have 40 million ads for dog beds. I mean, every click is resulting in someone trying to sell me something. And yet, am I still on Instagram? Yes, I am. Am I still on TikTok, which we could talk about that, potentially being banned in the US? But you don't have options. And we will not have options if we are not willing to pay for those options. It's the same with content. Why pay for The Guardian or the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal? If we're not willing to pay for content and pay for the tech that is there to serve us and protect our data and help us serve and make our lives better, then we are the product. Yeah. And it's just a painful reality because I'm a hypocrite in that regard. But there also are not options, right? And I think that we have to, and this is as an investor, I care so much about this and supporting companies. Like we might not all have, huge budgets to invest in startups, but we have our consumer purchasing power. And we're seeing people opt out of platforms like Twitter. Blue Sky is taking off or X or whatever, because they're like, I'm not supporting, Elon Musk, who's now worth, I think as of this morning, I think I saw 348 billion in personal wealth, right? The concentration of wealth is because we use these platforms and they're effectively monopolies. And nothing gets to scale in a way that is aligned with our values. So I am on the soapbox around this. It's why, I'm invested, in 25 women-led and women-founded companies, including Up Level, because I want these things to exist in the world. And I need to lead with my consumer dollars and my investment capital. And we need options in technology. So sorry, that was my tide, but it matters so much. It matters so much. And I'm so passionate about this, needless to say. And please feel free to post questions in the chat. We have about 10 more minutes before we wrap up. And Shubi, I want to talk to you about, so UpLevel is this amazing platform. It's going to be both B2B and B2C. And one of the ways you're actually doing it in a B2C to get people on the platform and experiencing UpLevel, which is, as far as we know, the first ever female-founded generative AI platform with a female-forward LLM as part of the experience. And you were building it as a tech platform, and then you saw what was happening around digital skills and digital acumen. And I know, like I too share your passion that's saying we need to ensure that women are not left out and off behind. And it's female forward. It's not only for women, but it's divine to be. And I love the term female forward. So you decided to create this offering, which, and never really in the history of even She Money have we partnered to basically recommend, I guess, an offering. And we're doing it because I think because I'm so passionate and I believe and I know who's doing it and share values that are so aligned around this. But you decided to create, and we talked about it in the newsletter, a digital acumen accelerator. So talk about what that is and why you decided to do it, because this is not easy. And I know it's coming from a place of passion, and I'm excited to participate in it for everything that the accelerator is offering, but also because it's on the UpLevel platform. It will be the first official, I guess, community hub that you're launching on UpLevel in 2025. So talk about why you did this and what it is.
Well, it goes back to everything we just talked about, which is where is the world going, the velocity, the transformation of the workforce. But we also know, and I'm not saying what we're trying to do is pure STEM, because that's not true. The transformation of the workforce does not mean everybody has to be STEM first. That's not the case. Having said that, though, and this is in Josie Cox's most recent Bloomberg article, is that the adoption of AI, and I'm not talking just about generative AI, but broadly AI, because AI does not equal generative AI either. So generative AI is a subset of AI, is not where the men are today. And that's not a good thing, because it's not just a digital divide. The digital divide is going to have real consequences on economic divide and wealth divide, etc. So recognizing that, and I'm just very fortunate that I have women like you in my life, but also somebody like Dr. Patricia Green. Mm-hmm. So Patty, is somebody who is so incredible, could be anywhere in her life, but really chooses to work with us and has been with me from the very, very beginning on my journey. And you probably know this, that Goldman Sachs, who has super deep pockets, could get anybody in the world to design their 10,000 Women's program, and actually had Patty, who was the dean and the provost of Babson University, design the 10,000 Women's program. And together we put our heads together with some other women experts, both from academia and industry, to say, with this, with the velocity of the digital age coming at us, how do we get women ready for it? And it's not the what. We have 8 modules in the accelerator, and they're all relevant to you being successful in corporate America. And the what is important, but what is really important is the how. How are you going to execute? How are you going to be able to impart this knowledge? How are you going to do it in a way that really resonates for us as women? And so that design, the part of it, right? The whole taxonomy of it, the whole pedagogy of it, the different modalities that we're using, that I think is where we spend a lot of time, money, and energy in building that out. But also then again, trying to do it at a, if you look at where, lots of universities are, 2 weeks, 3 weeks is $3,000 to $22,000, or somebody was at Google for 1 hot minute and all of a sudden they have a $950, 2-week course, and it was just crazy. The pricing was all over the place. So I also wanted to have it to be at a sensible price point for a whole year, where women can come together for, first 8 months is all about the 8 modules, but then I wanted to give another 4 months after that, so that women could continue to stay connected, build that community, learn together, grow together. And so there was a lot of thinking that went in and also launching the accelerator. Not just, oh, here is a place where you can go learn about AI, but how you learn and enjoy it and becomes a part of your experience was important to me.
Yeah, and when you came up with this idea, frankly, I really did. I think it was absolutely genius, because it's one thing when it's something is new, and we have our community on Mighty Networks, which has been a very robust place in some ways, but also really tough to generate activity. And I'm part of digital communities with every, Women Moving Millions, alumni networks, even on LinkedIn, which is amazing, has these groups. But what I have not been part of is something that has that learning journey that comes alive, and it has a container within a digital platform that has an embedded generative component, meaning as you are learning and gathering those learnings and collective experiences in a non, let's just be clear, in an aggregated kind of way, are being harvested and used to inform the future learning of the tool itself. Well, the LLM, which is Genie, like a generative AI tool embedded in an ongoing learning experience that's personalized. And again, we have not experienced that, and it's historic. And I mean that so sincerely, because even again, going back to creating She Money and using it and studying it to some ways, like thinking about how we do this around money, or setting up, and I know you're going to launch other hubs around collective learning experiences. How do you create even communities of practice, people that are passionate about something, that have expertise, that want to come together and just make that come alive in community. So we just don't have a model for it, which is one of the reasons I'm so excited about it. So we're going to post about it. And if you do, we're all participating here at She Money. I think my team is excited to do this. And to have our goal is to have 1,000 women. It's not female forward. Yes, men are included. And women plus, we'll use that inclusively, that inclusive language. But to do something so historic and be on this journey at a time when around AI and the tools and all of that just feels really important and really historic, which is, and to your point, versus a static course. It's just, I've never experienced anything like this, which is why I'm so excited to participate in it. So Shubi, just in the last couple of minutes, and I feel like we could keep talking, we barely scratched the surface of so many important topics, but we'll check if there's any questions left unanswered. And obviously people can reach out to you, to me, have more questions about the accelerator. We can have more calls like this where we talk more about topics, related to AI and technology. But anything that we didn't cover today that just feels important to mention in this moment before we sign off?
Well, we women, and I'm being really generalizing this in a big way, really are very thoughtful about how we spend money on us. But what I would really like to women to think about, and Jackie and I touched on this a little bit, is investing in yourself, whether that's self-care or whether that's personal development or professional development, is really important, because the long-term ROI on it is really huge, and now more than ever. And so, I think we need to start to think in that way, which is, how do you prioritize yourself and think about where do you want to be in 5 years, and whether that's joining the Up-Level Accelerator or there's something else, but invest in yourself and make sure that you stay relevant in the workforce.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I mean, that motivates so much of what we do here at She Money, is creating that social capital and those relationships and those friendships, and the skills and the relevancy to just earn more, right? We say all the time at She Money, money matters, and it really does. And how do you ensure that you're staying on that trajectory, whether it be in your earning power? We have the 7 money moves, whether you're spending, investing, giving, all of that in community, and taking care of yourself and your financial wellness. I know we got a question about, is there scholarships available? We're looking into this. We are in active discussion. We're even looking, you mentioned in one of your states that there could be grant money available. There will likely be some scholarships available for this. we're looking for foundations that might want to sponsor people to do it. This is relevant when you're in the corporate sector, nonprofit. I have friends that just want to know a lot about AI and don't know where to start that are doing this. So we're trying to make it at a very affordable price point and have some, well, not we, you, should we have some scholarships available. And again, in a world where everything was free, that would be awesome. But unfortunately, it just can't be. Just like any college, university, or anyone offering a course, just can't make it free. But I think you could sign in to learn more about that on the UpLevel platform. So just in closing, thank you for joining us today. Again, you can reach out to Shubi, you can reach out to me. We posted lots of resources. We'll keep talking about this. UpLevel also has a podcast that you just launched that I love. So that's a way to connect and subscribe to that. Any other ways to engage right now with you, Shubi, that you want to share before we close out?
Well, I would like to think that we've, again, been very thoughtful in how we build our website, which should have not just the podcast, but also really good content around blogs, and most importantly, we really try to help women to bring this into their organizations, and how can you help your organization to build a strong business case around why this is critical. Because if we all women did our part, I think this whole digital age could be extremely powerful for us.
Yeah. And we didn't have a chance to talk about the whole investment thesis around this, which I think can also come alive as part of the accelerator, which I'm excited about as well. So thank you, Shubi. Thanks for everyone who's joining. Have a happy holiday season. And so as we close out our last LinkedIn Live for 2024, if you're watching this on replay, I hope you had a great holiday season, and stay connected with us, subscribe to the newsletter, and just wishing everyone health and happiness for the end of the year and into 2025. Thanks to my team here that made all of this happen. And thanks to you, Shubi.
Thank you, Jackie. And thank you to your team as well. Yes. And thank you to all of you, and happy holidays.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.